Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's time for our Workplace Mediation Online Showcase for our Friday webinar today, our free webinar here at UK Mediation. Delighted to have you all join us today. It's fantastic to see people from all around. We've got trainees of our own, we've got organisations we've worked with from housing, from private sector. We've got people from other mediation providers. We've got Czech Republic represented today, Denmark represented today, USA. So delighted to see you all here from UK and from around the world for our Workplace Mediation Online Showcase. This is one in our series of free webinars. This will be on YouTube afterwards in case you want to share it or watch it again. And as we progress through the webinar, you're very welcome to use the chat box within YouTube to ask a question, make a comment, polite one. And raise anything you would like me to go into in some more detail, or make a comment or an observation. You're very welcome, and we enjoy making it more interactive if we can. So here's what we're going to be looking at today. First of all, I'm Mike Talbot, I'm a psychotherapist, and as we're online you can't now run away in that knowledge, but I've come to this from a background in psychotherapy, looking in particular here at the psychology of conflict. So I'm very interested in what is it about conflict that makes it so difficult to resolve? Where does anger and shame and other psychological processes come into play? And in particular, what's needed in the way of an impartial third party in order to work with people to try and resolve their often entrenched conflict. So today we're looking at workplace conflict, and we're going to be doing a workplace mediation in action, which means I'll be illustrating the steps and stages, including a dramatic build-up to a workplace mediation, the 7-stage mediation model that we use, how we apply it in the workplace, and then leaving a bit of time at the end for Q&A. There's quite a lot of the mediation process to get through. It's a little bit frustrating because I only show you little tidbits of each stage, so you don't see everything, but hopefully we've selected clips that would be interesting and informative for you. So let's crack on with thinking about the characters in our workplace conflict. So let's meet Sally and Heather. We're just about to show you our first mediation clip of these two colleagues who work in a plumbing company. Sally's come into the company into the accounts department rather, from a different division, according to our colleague Heather. She shouldn't even be there. They've got very different working styles, as you will see, and the two of them come into conflict as we're just about to illustrate. So let's see what happens with Sally and Heather.
Sally and Heather work together in the accounts department of Connors Plumbing Supplies. Heather has been in her role for some years, while Sally has only recently joined the department following a reshuffle. There is some bad feeling from Heather over Sally's appointment, with Heather claiming that Sally only got the job because of her friendship with James, the departmental manager. Sally and James had worked together over a number of years before the current reshuffle. Sally claims in return that Heather over-scrutinises her work and her timekeeping and is cold and unfriendly with her. The two have quite different approaches to work, and this has begun to cause some tension. James has no issue with the two of them getting the job done, but has needed to speak to them separately about the importance of getting on together. They continue to rub each other up the wrong way, and there is often an atmosphere in the office. It is Tuesday morning, a few days before the deadline for an important report to be completed. Sally is on the phone to her friend.
Hi Liz, yeah, it's nice to talk to you. Yeah, I was just ringing to find out what time we're going to meet for the theatre on Tuesday. Yeah. We go for about 1:30. Perfect. Yeah, it'd be fantastic to see you then. Oh, actually, do you want to go for a coffee first? That would be great.
Oh, for God's sake, it's not like it's even dinner time or anything.
Yeah, 1:30, Liz. Yeah, that should be absolutely fine. Okay. All right. Bye. What are you doing at the weekend?
Nothing special.
Oh, we're going out with Phil. It's his birthday. Do you know Phil from sales?
Yeah.
It's his 50th. Would you like to come along?
No, it's all right. It's not really my kind of thing.
Oh, it's his 50. You should really enjoy yourself. Come on, you're a fantastic time if you come.
Look, I said no, I don't want to go. We've got this important report to get finished. Perhaps we should be getting on with that instead of organising our social life.
Well, oh, has she had a second baby yet? Oh, that's lovely. She had a little boy. What's she called him? Oh, that's really nice. Hold on a minute.
Sorry to interrupt. How's your part of the report going?
Yeah, getting it done.
Do you think you'll have it done by tonight? Only I've got mine finished and I need to work yours into it.
By tomorrow. Yes, hi Ruth. Sorry for the interruption.
Sorry, Sally, I've not finished.
Sorry Ruth, I'll have to ring you back.
You've been on the phone for nearly 20 minutes. You could be doing your report then.
I'm
Before
on the
that, you had
phone
a break.
to Ruth from Albright's.
Well, it doesn't sound like it. You was on for at least 20 minutes and before that having a break.
Is that right? That's the crux of it, isn't it? You are constantly monitoring when I go for my break. You think you're in charge, well you're not. You're always evaluating what I'm doing and timing when I have my breaks. I've had enough of it.
No, I don't. You're just being bloody childish now. For God's sake, can you just get your part of the work done? I've had enough of this. You're an absolute nightmare. I'm going to have to speak to James.
Heather goes to see James to complain about what she sees as Sally's lack of commitment to the job, distracting behaviour and disregard for important deadlines. James spends some time with Heather and then asks to speak to Sally, who tells James that she is upset about aspects of Heather's manner towards her. Later that morning, James gets them together for a joint conversation, partly about the day's events, but also about the more long-standing conflict between the two of them. James has previously spoken to the two of them about their working relationship and feels that he has done all he can. He proposes that they try mediation to build a better understanding of each other. An external mediator is brought in. He starts by seeing the two colleagues separately with the intention of getting them together later on.
So there we have it with Sally and Heather. Oh my goodness. So let's have a think about what's going on with these two. So first of all, there's clearly a bit of a fallout from the restructure. They've got different narratives around what's happened with Sally coming into the department. I think there's something to do with this alleged allegiance or friendship with James, and some perceptions of unfair treatment. So fairly typical in workplace disputes, as I'm sure people who are on the webinar today will probably know. And clearly here as well, vividly illustrated there in the office, there's a clash of styles. So we've got Heather who likes to work in a more concentrated way. She puts her headphones on to shut out noise. And as far as Sally's concerned, to shut her out as well. Sally prefers this sort of social contact with customers. She's forming good rapport with the customers and clients and spending time on the phone during working hours to maybe have a mixture of a more relaxed working day, bit of mixing leisure with work, whereas Heather's a bit more wanting to concentrate, get on with the job. Clearly a bit of clenched teeth going on there. There's some resentment around what's happened allegedly from Heather's point of view with Sally coming into the department. So there's a bit of history there which fairly typically will contaminate their relationship. And then there's a communication breakdown. Bit shouty in the kitchen, you're a nightmare, slamming the book down, and off to see the manager, which is not unusual. So the manager's input, let's just have a quick think about that, because we don't recommend that you put every conflict situation straight into mediation. Quite the opposite. We spend a lot of our time these days trying to help people, support organisations, how not to need a mediator. So we do a lot of work with upskilling managers to be able to run facilitated conversations. So from the manager's point of view, the job is getting done. There's no issues with performance or capability. As far as he's concerned, the task is being completed. He has spoken to them both because it would be a lot better if the two of them could get on in a more collaborative way. They don't have to be friends, but it's far more constructive if they could have a positive collegiate relationship. Otherwise it rubs off on customers, it rubs off on other colleagues, it can affect retention and engagement and so on. So even though the work is getting done, it's helpful to have a more constructive, more sort of collaborative working relationship between the two. He's spoken to them both, he's tried to facilitate a conversation between the two of them, and has not really got there. There would be a bit of a problem, I think, in this situation where part of the allegation around the unfair treatment is that Sally had a prior friendship or at least knew James prior to coming into the department, and according to Heather this is a big deal, as we will see when we get into the the mediation process itself, which is where we go next, because from the manager's point of view, he needs this extra layer of independence or impartiality. He feels he's done as much as he can. He's tried to facilitate a conversation. He's spoken to HR about how to manage this. Is there any sort of issues around performance, any capability, competence issues? No, not really. So it's time to try and mend the working relationship. It's a given that these two guys have to work together. So we start to think about bringing in an external mediator, which is what's going to happen. So let's have a quick look at the 7-stage mediation model, and we'll illustrate it further with video clips. So let's have a think about what this looks like, this here model. So the 7-stage model begins with an initial contact with party 1. So it doesn't matter who goes first. It could be alphabetical order. It depends sometimes on diaries. There is nothing to be read into who goes first, although sometimes the parties may perceive it that way. So we're into a private session with a strict confidentiality agreement, allowing the party to offload, have a good old catharsis, because these things really wind people up. There may be tears, there may be strong emotion to be expressed. The mediator's job is to try and think about this party's interests. What are their needs and imperatives and drivers, their underlying wants and wishes. And once we have an idea of that and we've spent a bit of time with the individual, we then look at getting their agreement to take it forwards this way. So we have a look at that in action. So let's have a look at stage 1 in action, hearing from Heather. Generally speaking, the normal rules of your company apply.
Oh, okay. So
whatever would be required of your company whilst you're here or at your office or in the canteen or in the kitchen, it's the same as when you're in mediation.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm happy
All
to
right.
sign. Yeah, happy to sign that.
Thanks very much. So that's really the only formal thing I do. So I put that away, Heather, and I'll say start anywhere and tell me what goes on.
Well, I don't know where to start. I find this quite difficult, to be honest.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I've worked for this company for 10 years, you know, longer than my manager and certainly longer than Sally's been there. I never had any issues, you know. I go to work, I've always got my job and all the work done on time, handed in, never any problems. And Sally, I think it was about 6 months ago, the company had a restructure. They decided they was going to outsource the marketing department, which is where Sally worked. They created a sales department, so a couple of the people that was in marketing went over to sales. And then all of a sudden there was a new role as well created in accounts, which, you know, I don't think was needed. I've been doing all the work on my own, perfectly fine. So
there we have the first part, really, sort of hearing from Heather. She's the first party. She's going to be sort of laying out her stall first. Mediator sets some boundaries, talks about how it's going to work, and she's got a couple of questions about what the process will be, particularly around any feedback or anything like that, and setting the boundaries up, really. So we have the 3 basics with mediation: confidentiality, the impartiality of the mediator, and the voluntary participation of each of the individuals. So let's get straight on and think about how we take it forward from that point. So still within stage 1 of our 7-stage model, let's have a look at how we now take that forward.
Well, I suppose the last thing is the eating, you know, and not knowing how I feel about hearing people eat. Not to do it at the desk, or, you know, if she's eating an orange, I can't hear that as much, but you know, she seems to purposely, it's crisps and apples all the time, you know, the loudest food she can find, and she just seems to smirk knowing that she's doing it, and I just feel that it's just totally disrespectful. You're asking for
some consideration for that as well, really.
Instead of just kind of brushing over it and laughing about it and making fun of me about it.
Okay, sure. All right. So the possibility is for the two of you to come back this afternoon and to have a conversation together with me here. Does that sound like it's a feasible prospect for you?
I don't know, to be honest.
What concerns might you have about that?
Well, just quite often she just totally lies about her aspect, you know. She tries to make out that she's always really polite and that, and people haven't always seen the nasty side with some of the comments and the mimicking. And so, you know, I love my job and where I work, and I don't want to leave.
Okay.
But this past 6 months, it's got to the point where that if it's not sorted out and she doesn't go, then I'm going to have to go. I just can't take it. So I'm willing to give anything a go, to be honest.
Okay, great. Well, that's all we can ask for, really. You know, is to give it a go. And you know, I think it's really helpful that you've got some ideas at the front of your mind about what you would ask Sally to do differently. And my job later on is to remain impartial, really. I'm not making a judgment about who's right or wrong. You mentioned, you know, previously attempts to sort this out have failed, possibly because, you know, that lack of impartiality. But my job is to try and remain impartial. I'm not here to say who's to blame or who's at fault or what anybody should do. I'm not going to direct people and say, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And we're very much looking at the future about what you can do from this point onwards. You'll probably need to talk about how you got to this point, I imagine. And my focus will more be on, you know, what can change from now on. So to that end, you know, my job is to help you have the conversation you need to have, to give you equal time to speak and equal encouragement to respond when you come back later on, and also to keep your conversation on track. And if at the end you agree to do some things differently and we put those down in an action plan or some kind of summary, is to help you do that as well.
Yeah, that sounds a lot more positive than previous. I mean, it's nice actually to have someone that is impartial listen to this, because you know, she's, as I say, she has everyone wrapped round her finger nearly at the office. And
you know, and it is getting to you. You've shown me today, you know, you're very upset by this. You're very frustrated. You're annoyed about the situation. You're fed up with what's going on, and you know, you're expressing that very clearly. And I'd encourage you to do that later on as well. In my view, you know, I think there's potential there to have a good conversation. It's not going to be necessarily cosy, but that's all right. It sounds like it's overdue.
I know it's not going to be
you know,
easy.
you're saying this is long overdue, and but hopefully we might be able to make something different happen today.
Well, at least this time she's not got the manager just being there on her side, who's the one that always has the meetings. So
all right, okay. Well, if you're happy to end there, then I'll see you again later on.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Mike.
So that's how we'd be taking it forward with Heather, who's the first party in this particular situation. So there we have it, the allowing the offloading, the interest, and getting her agreement to take it forwards. Then we're into the second stage, where we're going to meet with Sally. So very similarly, treating Sally in the same way, giving her the same amount of time, same attention. Going second, she might be curious about what's happened so far and whether, you know, whether Heather's been and what she's been saying then, and that would be normal. That would be something we would expect. So the mediator would deal with that. We've got to gain the trust, especially as there is this sense that she's going second, and that we've already heard some stuff from the first party. Exercising the impartiality and, of course, maintaining that privacy, not disclosing things from the first party to the second. So let's crack on with that, and let's hear from Sally.
And there she is calling me names again, you know, and she does this often. She will claim that she isn't doing. She says that it's all about favouritism and that James only listens to me, but she's not actually giving a true picture of what she's doing and what she's saying and how difficult she's being about it. She doesn't want me there. So it's a very, you can imagine the environment's very, you feel like you're on tenterhooks all the time. I feel very uncomfortable. And I said the reason I suppose you've come in is because it sort of came to a head the other week. We were in the kitchen. I'd gone in to make a cup of tea and I was on the phone to an accountant from a company. And while I was on the phone, she came in and she was trying to get my attention. So in the end, I pulled the phone away from my head, and she saying, when's the report? You know, when's the report going to be done? What a bloody report. She goes on and on about this. If it's done 10 times a day, she's asked for that flaming report. I told her it would be done the next day, and I said that again and said, can you leave it for now? Because I was on the phone. But she wouldn't, and she sort of went on again. And then she just lay off, leave it. And she went mad. And she began calling me names. She called me a nightmare and that I was bloody childish. Well, to be honest, she's bloody childish.
Okay. So it sounds like it goes back to the time that you've come into the department from your
Yes.
point of view. You know, right back then,
Yes.
you know, you didn't feel particularly welcomed in,
Not
and you
at all
didn't feel
welcome.
as if.
I was welcomed, obviously, by the manager, and felt that I was looking forward to the role.
Sure. Okay. And as though, you know, you weren't allowed to sort of prove yourself and show that you could actually do the job.
That's, yeah.
You felt as if Heather was sort of not allowing you that space, or wasn't really sort of moving over so that you could find your place.
Most definitely. She made it very clear from the first moment that she didn't want me there.
Yeah. Okay. And you're frustrated about that, and
Very frustrated.
and you know, it's been difficult right up until this point, where now, by the sound of it, your sort of working style clashes with your colleagues.
It does. I mean, she even comments about how many tea breaks I go for. You know, and she feels that she can determine when I go for break, how I produce my work, what the content should be.
Okay,
You know, it's irksome.
and that doesn't suit you. You know,
No.
that's annoying to you, because
Yeah.
you want to choose when you have your breaks. You want to choose to spend time talking to clients and building those relationships, as you put it.
Yeah.
You know, and be able to decide how to schedule your own working day,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, because she can be.
So there we are, there's Sally's story. Clearly it's going to be different to Heather's story, and we're hearing a different perspective. In the mediator's mind, it's not about who's right and who's wrong, of course. It's just hearing these two different narratives. They're usually opposing narratives. We could think about it as two different sets of recollections of the same events, but you're going to get two different stories, otherwise they wouldn't be in conflict. So they're the first two stages, and I'll just make the point at this stage, really, you know, this is how we do mediation. It's a model we've tried and tested over the last 22 years, since 1999, since May 99, so just over 22 years. Different providers will do it slightly differently. I see we've got various people on from different mediation companies, so Mark, from a more legally orientated perspective, might do this a little bit differently. Joanna, from a different mediation provider, I know that over there you guys do this a little bit differently. So just to make the point for our viewers today, you know, this is not the only way to do it. It's just the way that we do it. And the next thing that we would do is go into our stage 3, which is preparing to work on the dispute, preparing to most likely go into a joint session with Heather and Sally, but sometimes we don't. So we have to ask ourselves some questions. Is this the best way forward? Do we bring them together, or do we put them in separate places and shuttle between them, which is something we could do online, or we could do it when we're face to face with separate physical rooms, or online, of course, we'll be using breakout rooms, and then choosing a time and place. We're just about now, as we are sort of mid-June 2021, just getting back face to face after lockdown and pandemic and home working and so on. We favour the face to face work if we can do it, but we have learned as well over the last 15 months or so that we can do online mediation perfectly well. So the selecting a time and place might be that we actually choose to do it online. So we're choosing the way forwards, and then in our stage 4 we're going to have a face-to-face session, whether that's online or face-to-face. What you'll see here is the introduction from the mediator, some talk about rules, and in particular the rules that we like to have are try and take it in turns to speak, and nothing that's personally abusive or name calling. And, you know, depending on the context, there might be a need for some other rules. In non-workplace disputes, there's sometimes that need. But workplace, there's an understanding about decorum, and we expect that people will conduct themselves properly. And then we give each party a bit of uninterrupted time to speak and lay out their stall. And then the mediator is going to summarise things and decide on an agenda of issues that need to be resolved. So we'll see all these bits broken down, but let's start with some uninterrupted time, beginning with deciding who goes first, and then looking at Heather's turn as she has a bit of uninterrupted time. Notice the body language here as we go into the beginning of stage 4. So if you're okay with that, then what I would suggest is, if I can hear from you both individually, if I could have one of you start to give you some uninterrupted time to talk about what's on your mind as you arrive this afternoon, and especially to talk about what you think needs to be discussed and what you want to get out of this, really. So if one of you would like to begin.
I would. Normally Sally's the one with everything to say, but
pause you a second. So Sally, are you okay if Heather goes first?
Why not?
You're all right with that, yeah? Okay, so Heather, we'll hear from you first. So it's to have some uninterrupted time to talk to me about what's on your mind and especially what you'd like to get out of this. And while Heather's talking, Sally, if you could please listen to what she's got to say and try and refrain from interrupting. And when it's your turn, I'll make sure Heather does the same for you. Okay, so Heather.
Well, obviously, as I said this morning, I'm just finding it impossible to work with Sally. Absolutely impossible. She came into the department 6 months ago, and since then it's just got worse and worse. She is constantly on the phone, not just to clients, to friends as well, people in other departments. She's extremely loud and brash when she's on the phone as well, you know, organising a social life. It's hard to concentrate, and it's unprofessional as well, being like that with clients.
So there's Heather having a bit of uninterrupted time to talk to the mediator about what's going on with her colleague. It takes a little bit of management from the mediator here. We've got to make sure that the party makes their comments initially to the mediator. In a minute, they're going to be talking directly to each other. But for this bit, we like the comments to be directed not into the left ear of the other party, but telling the mediator and talking in third person about the other participant. Bit careful about name calling. There's a couple of things there. She's loud, she's brash. They're adjectives, they're not quite name calls, but they're pretty close. And the mediator's continually having to monitor this to make sure that people are working within the rules and imposing the rules fairly so that we reinforce our impartiality, sense of fairness, making sure that we're treating them both exactly the same. So let's move on then into the next logical part of it, which would be Sally's uninterrupted time. So, Sally, thank you very much for your patience while we heard from Heather. And like I say, I'll ask Heather to be patient when we hear from you in a second. So just before we do that, Heather, from your point of view, you know, you want to be able to work without interruption. You want to have little disturbance. That's the way you work. There's a couple of things that need to be talked about with regard to eating at the desk, with regard to how Sally structures her working day in a manner that suits your working day. You want to be able to speak to Sally, get hold of her. You want to be able to get hold of pieces of work that might be on her desk, which from, you know, you describe as not as orderly as you would like it to be, or not as orderly as you would have your own workspace.
Yeah, definitely.
And some stuff about, you know, how the two of you generally sort of relate in the office, how much chat there is, how much social contact there is, and how much work time there is.
Yeah, you know, sometimes it's as though I feel as though she's doing it on purpose. Like with the eating, I said, you know, she knows I can't stand it. Yet when she gets a pack of crisps out, she puts one in her mouth, looks over with a big smirk on her face, you know, as though she's doing it on purpose.
So to have an understanding about how that affects you or impacts on you.
She doesn't seem to think it's a condition. She just shrugs it off.
Okay.
No, it's just not showing me any respect whatsoever.
Something else we could be talking about this afternoon, really. Okay.
I mean, I've tried. Right. I've tried. I tried to help her. She's never done accounts before. So I was trying to offer her training and things like that, but she seemed to think she knew it all, even though she'd not had training in it. I've studied
so there might
for years.
Be something there as well about, you know, about how the two of you, sort of the level of competency that you're working at with the job, you know, how much training you have or how much training you need and so on. All right, I'll pause you a second, Heather. Though there's a chance to come back to many of those things, all of those things. So, Sally, if I turn to you now, and thanks again for your patience while we heard from Heather.
Yeah.
So it's your turn to have some uninterrupted time. So tell me about things from your point of view, what's on your mind this afternoon, but especially, you know, what you'd like to get out of this.
Well, she was going on about my eating. Oh, it's ridiculous. I have to have small regular meals. And she's on about the fact that I'm taking crisps and then purposefully eating them in front of her loudly.
Just if I could just stop the two of you. First of all, Heather, when it's Sally's turn, as it was when it was your turn, I'd please ask you not to interrupt and to let Sally have her go. Sally, while you're making your comments, if you could make your comments directly to me, please, rather than to Heather. And the other thing, I didn't mention it earlier, but I would please ask you to refrain from sort of mimicking each other there. You were just beginning to do it. And again, you know, it is tricky, this. It is a hard thing to have to go through. But if you're mimicking each other, then that can go to a difficult place. So I'd ask you please to try and refrain from that if you can.
Okay. She's been It's been difficult since I first started here, and we've talked about this earlier, didn't we? She thinks the role was created for me through nepotism, you know, the fact I've known James, that we've worked together before, and the fact that the job was created for me.
Everybody knows that it was created for you, for God's
sake. And
sake.
again, if you just pause a second. So for a second time, Heather, for a second time, please. I do need to be able to hear what Sally's got to say. You had the privilege of your uninterrupted time when I asked Sally to wait. Okay. So if you could just hold on until she's done. There's plenty of opportunity for the two of you to have a conversation afterwards. So there we see a number of aspects of what happens when the two start to offload in front of each other and in front of the mediator. So the mediator's job is to hear and summarise and empathise and collect up what will be the future focused intentions of the parties. So in the psychology of this, what both of them want to do is to tell the historical story and apportion blame to the other party to try and get themselves off the hook, because who wants to be at fault, and also to, I guess, to hook the mediator so the mediator sees it their way and not the other person's way. And that's normal. I'm not surprised when people do that. It's something that we just have to expect as mediators. So I'm concerned with interests, I'm concerned with the underlying needs and drivers, I'm concerned with the future more than the past, and I'm in particular concerned with a shared responsibility that these two colleagues have to try and make this situation better. What they might be doing is trying to prove on the basis of examples that they're giving and the more and more sort of emotionally laden stories that they deliver to the mediator in front of the other party, trying to prove that they're not the one who's in the wrong. The mediator sort of does a bit of selective hearing around that and tries to get it to the place where actually we're focusing more on the future than on the past. So as we do that, and as we start to conclude with the stage 4, we'll start to decide on an agenda. I like to use a flip chart for this, which is what you'll see in the video, an agenda of issues that then need to be negotiated. So a few things there that you would like to discuss, a few things there you'd like to discuss. Some of them are in common, some of them are individual to you. So from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, there's a need to get a better deal about the state of the working environment. You know, you like it orderly and knowing where you can put your hand on things. Sally, your desk is your desk. It's maybe not managed in the same way as Heather's is, but you prefer to be
considered tidy, you know.
You prefer to be in charge of how it is yourself,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely.
Regards the job, you know, Heather, I think you're looking for some reassurances that Sally is contributing as much as you are, and you're coming from the place of having, you know, run the department yourself. So that's, you know, your perception is coloured by that. Sally, from your point of view, you want Heather to trust you, to know and to acknowledge that you can actually do the job.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just bring the flip chart in then. And start wherever you want to start, really. So one of the topics you've talked about is around sort of noise, disturbance, quiet, concentration in the office.
Talking too much and too loud on the phone.
So a need to get a better deal about when you talk, how much you talk. I don't know, it's up to you.
Just keeping the volume down a bit, you know.
Okay.
Well, I'd like some conversation from your
I'm
side.
not saying don't have no conversation. I'm saying keep it a bit quieter.
How about if I put conversation in the office or just conversation?
Okay, yeah.
You know what it means.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's start with that. Well done. So that's the first one. So what you can see there is the effort on the part of the mediator to reframe. So we're trying to switch away from what they want to do, which is to blame one another, to give aspects of the history, try and prove they're the one that's in the right and the other guy's in the wrong, and also insist that things turn out a particular way. The mediator's job is to reframe this into some agenda items which point the way forwards, which are more to do with interests, the underlying needs and imperatives, and demonstrate this shared responsibility that the two of them have to try and make this situation better. So that's the mediator's endeavour, and at the same time, as you saw there, trying to keep to the rules, even starting to deliver a 3 strikes thing around the interruptions, because we're not going to encourage a free-for-all. They need to have their argument, and they're going to have their argument, but to do it in an ordered way and in a way that makes sure that nobody is persecuted or wiped out. And that requires that the mediator keeps to the rules, enforces them fairly. So once we've got our agenda, we're at the end of our stage 4. We've decided which items need to be discussed. What is it you need to negotiate? What do you need to sort out then? So trying to shift, again, the focus away from the past and into the future. This is when we move into the stage 5, the negotiation phase. So this is about picking one of the issues on the agenda that they can decide which one it is, and we'll typically have 3 to 4 things on the agenda. Sometimes we have something below the line, which is what you'll see here, and that means there's an issue that cannot be negotiated. There's no point arguing about this particular issue, and in this case it's how the recruitment process was run. I mean, it's done. It's not something that we can change through mediation. If they want to appeal it or revisit it with HR, that's fine. But we need to put that boundary down around mediation. This is about the working relationship. So as we move into the stage 5, they agree where to start. The mediator is continually reframing, trying to get the focus onto the future, onto people's interests, onto the shared responsibility to make things better. Summarising any areas of consensus, anything where we find there is some narrowing of the gap between the two parties. And if necessary, it doesn't happen in this case, but sometimes it is necessary to take the parties separately into side meetings and speak to them alone, and we can do it online as well, of course, using breakout rooms. In this case, we managed to keep them together in the room as we start to work through the agenda, doing some negotiation and beginning to pull out some areas of consensus and agreement, and we'll pick it up as we're part way down the agenda and we've started to tick the issues off. Let's see how it goes with Sally and Heather as we continue in stage 5 to work on the issues. Which one would you like to pick now?
Time at desk, I think that kind of links in.
Time spent at the desk?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that then. So this was raised by you, Heather, when you started. You're talking about being able to get hold of Sally, and having a sense of, you know, fair shares, but also if the stuff that the two of you are working on together, you've been able to find her and ask her things that you need to know.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, you're constantly getting up and going for breaks. I never know where you are. You know, we've got deadlines and things to meet.
Yeah, but it's not up to you to decide when I have my breaks.
I'm not wanting to decide when you have your breaks. It would just be nice to know where you are. I need work from you sometimes to be able to continue or to put in other reports, and I never know where you are.
Yeah, but you're micromanaging. It's almost like you're indicating when I can have a break.
You're always doing that. I'm not dictating.
So let me just pause the two of you. So Sally, you're saying you don't want to be micromanaged.
No.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry if you do feel like you're micromanaged. That's not my intention.
No, you shouldn't be managing me at all.
Well, I'm not. But you have to appreciate I've got things to do that I need your work as an input into it, and I can't do it without it. But you're always off on breaks everywhere.
I'm not always off on breaks.
Let's face it, you're off quite a lot.
Well, there's a reason for that, isn't there? Because
you don't do your work.
I don't feel comfortable. It's freezing in our room. It's a horrible place to be, and I will spend as much time somewhere else as possible.
Well, why don't you just get a heater or something? You know, then you haven't got an excuse to be going off all the time.
I didn't mean it like that, and you know it. It was about how you are towards me.
I wouldn't say it's freezing. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. You know, it goes two ways, Sal. It really does.
So, Sally, would it be helpful for Heather to know the reasons, the sort of why you're away from your desk?
Well, sometimes I'm doing it because it's just so uncomfortable in the room, and sometimes I'm doing it because I'm going to go for a break and have a snack and a drink, and sometimes it's because I'm going to find somebody to have a quick chat with about something.
Okay. Yeah, about me most of the time.
Because you're saying, Sally, you know, you don't have much interaction in the office, so actually you go off to get interaction with other people.
Yeah, I'd go mad otherwise.
Okay. So Heather, would it be a useful thing for you to tell Sally why it's a problem to you when she is away from the desk? What impact does it have when Sally's not around at her desk?
It's purely, I mean, I'm not bothered when she has her breaks. You know, I'm not, but if I've got things to do, it's just common courtesy just to let me know that you're going off on a break. You know, if I'm in the middle of something and then I look up because I need some input and she's off and then I can't get hold of her. You know, I go to the usual places. I'll go in the kitchen, she's not in there, or I'll go up to sales and she's not. I don't know where she is. I've not got ages to spend running around looking for you when I've got work to do.
But you're telling me I can't, I've got to be away from my desk to eat, and now you're telling me I've got to be at my desk to do my work.
Oh, don't be so facetious and childish, honestly.
So Heather, when I hear you use that kind of language, I'm thinking this is what led to the current situation. So really what I'd like you to do, please, is to try and refrain from words like that, especially things like childish. And that way we can be sure that we're moving forwards, you know, and getting away from the point where we did begin today and into a rather better place. Is that going to be all right for you?
Okay.
But just to try and catch that bit of discussion between the two of you. You need to be able to get hold of Sally when you want her and ask her questions. Sally, you like to be away from the desk, stretch or break or go and have a, you know, an interaction with someone or have a snack. So what can the two of you do about this? So there we are in stage 5, a bit more of the lively part of the mediation there, and you can see what the mediator's job, the mediator's endeavour is to try and get the two of them having the right kind of argument. There's nothing wrong with having an argument, but it just needs to be the right sort of argument, and the mediator needed to impose the rules fairly on the two of them. So that might be quite a long bit, and of course we're having to select very, very short clips out of this session today just to try and illustrate little bits of mediation in action. But that could go on for about half a day, probably, the joint session. That would be quite typical. Normally we'd see the two parties in the morning and then spend the rest of the day getting them together. So once we finished our stage 5, we move into a phase of gathering up all the elements that have been agreed. Once they're sure that they've had enough time, sometimes we need to schedule a further session, but often it's concluded in that half a day. And then we're looking at the stage 6, which is about getting, taking all of it forwards, gathering up the concessions and offers and ideas, the ways that the distance has narrowed between them, and drafting this into an agreement. We need to decide whether they want to disclose that to the referrer, the manager, maybe James. They consider it would be helpful if he saw it, so he can support them to put that agreement into place. And we often talk about fallback arrangements as well, and if we don't have a successful outcome, what might be any alternative courses of action too. So let's move on quite quickly into the stage 6, which is about us drafting the agreements. So I've taken your points off the flip chart and put them onto the draft of an agreement. I just need to pin down one or two things so that make sure that they're actionable, make sure that they are actually going to happen when you get back to the office. So in terms of keeping the volume down for phone conversations, that's pretty straightforward. The social lunch, is one of you going to sort of put a note around about that the next time there's a birthday or something?
Yeah, I think if you want to.
Yeah, shall I do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so Sally put for the memo around social lunch. The next time, let's have a lunch rather than going out for drinks.
Yeah.
And in terms of you telling Sally when you're going to put your headphones on, so you're just going to catch her eye, indicate that the headphones are going on. That's fine, we've got that one. All of these things, can they start straight away? There's nothing in the way of...
I don't think there's anything that we need to defer or anything. It can be straight
So
away.
I've got the start time on there as well.
Yeah, I can do the
great.
list on Monday, yeah.
Fine, so I've got that on your agreement. It's not binding, it's just something that's here in good faith really. Something that if the two of you try and make it work, it'll work. So I'll give that to you now to sign. You just sign it to say that you agree to the form of words that we've come up with.
Yeah.
And then we're pretty well finished.
Yeah.
So shall I hand that to you and you can have a read of it. Just make sure you agree with those words. And then we'll hand it to Heather and then we're done.
Yeah. Just sign here?
Yes, please, yeah. And Heather, take a look at that if you're happy with that form of words as well.
Yeah, do I just sign at the side or
just
below?
Next to Sally's, yeah.
Oh.
So there we are with the written agreement in this case. So parties don't always need to reach a written agreement. The important bit is about the dialogue. It's about the getting into a place where they have that psychological contact within the mediation session, understanding one another's motives, drivers, actions, getting an explanation for past actions, getting an agreement about future actions. And they don't have to be friends, they don't have to get on in that warm, cosy way, but they do, we do expect that they get to a point where they are able to go back to the office, have a constructive collegiate relationship that doesn't draw in any of the organisation's formal resources, and certainly doesn't have to need to go tugging the sleeve of the manager, as we saw right on in the first part of the video clips. So we have an agreement. Success rate, people often ask me about this, somewhere between 80 and 90%-ish. All the published research would come out at around about 80-85%. Some people claim they get agreements in 100% of cases. No, they don't. There are some cases which have been left too long, or where the parties are not minded to agree, or where the issues turn out not to be subject to mediation. So there's a good outcome in this case. And the next bit will be thinking about what we do now. We've got our agreement. We close it down. They agree who's going to see the output from the mediation process. In this case, it might be James, the manager. We close it down, and then we often agree to have a follow-up session, usually 6 weeks later. So let's just have a look at that bit, the stage 7, which is all about following up. So with that agreement and the way you've worded it, are you happy for that to be seen by the manager so that he knows?
I am. I think it shows that then we're trying.
I mean, if you're happy for him to see that, then that's great. What we can do is send that back to him as the referrer, so that he knows what you're doing. I think the value in that is that he can support you to make sure that happens. If he knows what you're trying to do.
I think that would work.
Yeah, I think that would be.
And if you don't mind, if I follow up with you in about 6 weeks' time, all I'll do is a short email and say, how are things going? Is it all working out? Just make sure your agreement's actually happening. That'll be all right with you as well.
Fine.
And there's our 7-stage model. So that's taking it through in a very whistle-stop way, a real dash through the model there. It's felt quite hasty from stage 1 all the way through to stage 7, and beginning with the dramatization of the conflict. Hopefully there's something useful in there for most of you. And let's have a chance now for a bit of Q&A. Any questions, any comments that anyone would like to make. Now you've seen that very quick demonstration of the 7-stage model. Great, so I can see there's just 1 or 2 comments coming in now. So, and again, I'm going to talk in a moment about our other upcoming webinars. We do a series of webinars throughout the year, typically on Friday afternoons, you know, they're around a variety of topics. You're always welcome to suggest topics as well. This has arisen from some suggestions, bit of a straw poll we had over recent months where people said, can we just see what it looks like? And I think it's a real, it's an important point with mediation. You know, to talk about it, it sounds quite easy, and from a distance, it looks quite easy. Actually doing it, it takes quite a bit of practice, and the illustration of it, actually showing people what mediation looks like, we usually get, oh, aha, I didn't realise that's quite what it looked like. So I'm just going to take 1 or 2 questions. I'm slightly running over, so we'll take this one from Kathy by email, who says, Kathy, thank you. I'd be interested to hear about situations where Mike's had to call off a mediation after the individual meetings based on what he heard from them. How common is this? Not very common, because we are very careful with our triage process. We have case managers here who will speak to referrers and help them to decide whether a situation is appropriate for referring to mediation. But just now and again, the parties might surprise you if some time has passed between getting the referral and actually seeing them. And sometimes they've started a formal process, which can make it very complicated doing mediation when you're in the throes of a quasi-legal, very evidential, past-focused process. It's kind of hard to do face-to-face mediation in that sort of context. Or there are some critical incidents that come up, or sometimes we're concerned for people's safety or capability, or occasionally we're concerned for people's mental predicament. There can be mental health issues. Stress-related illness is not uncommon in people who've got protracted workplace conflict. So just now and again, but as always, it's safety first. So if we've got any concerns for making a predicament worse, then we won't go ahead with mediation at that time. We'll always either postpone it or speak to the referrer about what alternative remedies they might use. So it's always the participant's safety is paramount. That's the first consideration. And I'll just take 1 more, I think, from Shafak. What happens when the referrer wants to see the contents of the agreement, but the parties haven't agreed to that? I think it's helpful if a great question, Shafak, thank you. It's a great question because the organisation who's paying for mediation from an external provider will often want to feel there's been some output, something they can use. From the mediator's point of view, the fact that the parties are getting on and they leave the mediation room having a conversation is a great output in itself. But we will ask the parties, even if you don't want to write down your full agreement, can we just summarise in a sentence or a paragraph where you've got to so the referrer knows? And we need the consent of both parties in order to disclose that. So there are occasions when they don't want the employer to know, and the employer says fine, so long as they're getting on and we haven't got any formal procedures and nobody's leaving and we haven't got the bust-ups anymore, I'm happy. But in other occasions, other instances, they would like to see something, and we would encourage the parties to consent for us to put something down and feed something back, even if it's very, very brief, and it usually is. Okay, so my time is up. Thank you very much. There's 1 or 2 other questions and comments coming in, but we'll deal with those by email. If you want to share this, it's going to appear on YouTube. So you're very welcome to view it afterwards or share it around. We have other webinars coming up. You can find all these on our website under /webinars. and there'll be a link in the chat box as well. So what's around the corner? We have one on conflict and neurodiversity on Friday 23rd of July, looking at the links between neurodiversity and conflict, how having neurodiverse individuals, different neurotypes if you like, in the workplace, how this can lead to misunderstanding around communication style, around people's supposed manner or attitude. And this is a very interesting thing in certain areas of industry in particular that we come across quite a lot as mediators. So let's have a look how the mediator can deal with this, with neurodiversity in the workplace in particular, what we do as mediators. And the next one that's around the corner is conflict on campus. So Friday 20th of August, hopefully just before the students get back onto their campuses. If students are indeed going back face to face later on this year, and we all hope so, looking at different types of conflict that can occur on university campuses, right from student-student conflict through to complaints handling, through to staff-staff conflict, and looking at all types of conflict on university campuses and how we deal with that particular culture, that particular setting as mediators. And I'm going to finish just to say, do keep in touch. All of the social media is up there now. You can like and subscribe YouTube, check us out on Twitter. We've got a LinkedIn page at UK Mediation, and do check us out on Facebook as well. Okay, that's it for a rainy Friday afternoon in Derbyshire. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined from all around the world today. Hope you've enjoyed that, and we look forward to seeing you next time.